LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the November 1st edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. Today I'll be using the 11 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for which would be entertaining, informative, educational, fair use, media criticism, and political commentary show for you all today. You can see my title topic is Democratic Dealmaking Goes into Overtime. I'm covering the bipartisan infrastructure bill tied to this Democrats-only reconciliation social spending bill, whatever you want to call it. I think this is like maybe the fifth time since of the 22 Monday media mix-ups that I've put out that I've been covering that as the main topic, and they're still working on the deal, and I'll be showing you some progressives, Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, Representative Ro Khanna, talking about the deals they're trying to make on negotiating the price of prescription drugs and getting good climate change incentives into the bill, and also have Secretary Pete Buttigieg talk about how parental leave isn't in the bill anymore, paid parental leave. Senator Rick Scott making a false claim about inflation. He's Republican senator from Florida. And then finally, I'll have an interview on Meet the Press, former Virginia governor trying to be governor again of Virginia. Tomorrow there's a big election for governor in Virginia that a lot of political pundits claim is a bellwether for how well the Democrats are going to do in the midterm elections next year, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll be previewing what some of those issues might be. And basically it's all about race and white people afraid of race, or, well, we'll see when we get to that clip. But before I get to any of that, I do have sort of a political comedy clip to show you. It's something I took from MSNBC's the Sunday show with Jonathan Capehart. I actually really enjoy that show. It's one of my favorite MSNBC shows, and I really like Jonathan Capehart. This is a clip of Jonathan Capehart on Halloween yesterday, dealing with sort of an unwanted spirit of Congress's past, I guess, or it shows that I'm not the only one who has problems getting the right clip to play on occasion, and that's kind of the problem that Jonathan Capehart had yesterday that I thought was kind of humorous. Even he thought was kind of humorous, and I will talk about it with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Thousands of families who were separated by the Trump administration at the border may soon be eligible for hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation. And this Sunday morning, at least one Republican isn't happy.
What are we thinking? Why would we be doing this? They broke our laws. These individuals broke the laws of the United States of America, and then the Biden administration, once they write them a check.
I'm sorry, good Lord. Joining me now is Elise Jordan, MSNBC political analyst, Eugene Daniels, Politico White House correspondent and MSNBC contributor, and Maria Hinojosa, president and founder of Futuro Media and author of Once I Was You. Thank you all very much for being on the Sunday show. Eugene, I'm starting with you. And with this sound from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg on paid family leave.
My biggest fear is Fairfax County, which has already announced that it's going to report late. It's the biggest single voting county in the state. I watched in Georgia.
Still the wrong clip that's playing in my ear. Can we have Pete Buttigieg now or no? Okay, you know what we're gonna do? No. Here's what we're gonna do. Maria.
It's a Halloween trick, Jonathan.
I know, really. Trick or
Treat.
treat. It's nothing but tricks up in here right now. All right, Maria, since we played the sound from Senator Scott and what he had to say about what the administration might do when it comes to families separated at the border, your reaction?
Oh my God.
So yeah, I'm not gonna show that answer there. Just knocked my phone off the table. Scared away the puppy. Sandy was lying there, and now she seems to be gone. But anyway, I had my own little mishap there to make the point that it looks like everybody has their broadcasting mishaps, and the quote you saw there from Senator Rick Scott at the beginning, that's not the clip I'm going to show you. It is a pretty despicable clip, especially if you have read this book right here, Separated, that details the extreme harm, child abuse, some might even say torture inflicted on these kids separated from their families. And a lot of them, a lot of them weren't even breaking the law. They were seeking asylum. Seeking asylum is not breaking the law, which is kind of that's the only place I have in this live stream to talk about how Rick Scott is so wrong about that, because it's not really going to come up in any of the rest of the clips. But I wanted to just mention that. And then what was that weird apparition of Newt Gingrich there? That was kind of scary, especially on Halloween. So I guess that is all tricks and no treats, like Jonathan Capehart was saying. And was it worth it as my political comedy clip? Well, I think next week I might have a chance to take something from Saturday Night Live again, or whatever. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm now going to get to the all five of the big five corporate news Sunday analysis programs had news summaries, shorter and longer, more skewed to the left and the right. We're going to juxtapose them all, starting with the best and longest news summary as usual from Chuck Todd, Meet the Press. He does a introduction about both, you'll see, like Biden's foreign trip and the Democratic deal-making are the main topics, but they throw in a bunch of other stuff, and and the Virginia governor's election coming up, and I will talk about all of that a little more after we watch the longest, best news summary of the day from NBC News' Meet the Press yesterday together over here.
Good Sunday morning. Happy Halloween. We have a brand new NBC News poll out this morning that's filled with some scary news for the Democrats. The overarching message: Americans have lost their confidence in President Biden and their optimism for the country. At least they have right now. Just 22% of adults say we're headed in the right direction. A shocking 71% say we're on the wrong track. And that includes a near majority of Democrats who are saying that. President Biden's approval rating stands at a dismal 42% versus 54% who disapprove. Believe it or not, just 2 months ago, Mr. Biden was in positive territory, 49% approving, 48% disapproving. So what's pulling down the president's numbers? Well, look at this set of numbers. Just 37% say he has the ability right now to handle a crisis versus nearly a majority who say he does not. 37% also say he's competent and effective as president. 50% disagree with that description. What's more, Republicans, believe it or not, have double-digit leads in dealing with border security, inflation, crime, national security, the economy, and shockingly, on getting things done. Democrats hold generally smaller double-digit leads on dealing with climate change, the coronavirus, education, and abortion. And that's really it right now. It's not clear yet whether any deal struck by Democrats on the social spending and infrastructure bills will nudge Mr. Biden's numbers back into positive territory, or whether the damage to his reputation is more of a scar than a bruise. But this much is clear. About the only good news for Mr. Biden and the Democrats in this poll is that the midterm elections aren't for another year.
I think we're going to be in good shape.
President Biden struggling at home, now facing allies in Europe without the political victory he had been hoping for. The 18-point Republican edge on handling of the economy is fueled by economic pessimism. 79% call the economy fair or poor. Just 41% of Democrats believe the country is headed in the right direction, down 23 points since April. And Republicans are up by 13 points on being effective and getting things done. A number likely driven by the messy public debate over Biden's social spending plans, which has exposed ideological divisions in the Democratic Party. On Thursday,
after months of tough and thoughtful negotiations, I think we have I know we have a historic economic framework.
But despite President Biden's last-minute trip to Capitol Hill, his departure delayed to nail down a deal, he left for Europe without one.
Too many no votes for the bill to pass today.
Need a little bit more than an IOU.
Clearly, to my mind, it has some major gaps in it.
The revised $1.75 trillion social spending plan includes funding to tackle the climate crisis for universal pre-K, elder care, and a one-year extension of the expanded child tax credit.
No one got everything they wanted, including me. But that's what compromise is. That's consensus.
But so far, the bill is primarily being defined by what's not in it. Tuition-free community college, a broad expansion of Medicare, lower prescription drug prices, and paid family and medical leave, which Biden pleaded for just over a week ago.
We're one of the few industrial countries in the world that does not have paid leave.
If paid leave's not in the bill, it would be devastating. It'd be devastating for working women and working parents.
On Tuesday in Virginia, Biden's agenda will get its first political test at the polls. According to a Washington Post Schar School poll, the governor's race in a state Biden won by 10 points is a pure toss-up.
Bring this baby home for me. We're going to send a shockwave across this country.
Certainly not everything going on in the White House right now is going smoothly. There's no argument about that. But I don't think taking a step backwards with Youngkin is the right way to go.
Look at the country. Look at the president. People are tired. They want to change.
Glenn Youngkin has successfully seized on cultural issues with a campaign centered on education, which voters call their top issue through the lens of parental grievance.
We will not teach our children to view everything through a lens of race. He's bringing his personal culture wars into our classrooms.
Former President Trump will headline a tele-rally Monday night for Youngkin, who has carefully walked the line, accepting his endorsement while attempting to distance himself personally.
Would you rally with Donald Trump if he came to Virginia this week?
Well, he's not coming.
Joining me now is someone the White House says can tell us what's been happening inside the room where these spending bills are still being negotiated. It is Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. Secretary Granholm, welcome back to Meet the...
And I don't have any Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm clips. I do have a Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg clip, who they both went out on the Sunday shows to talk for the speak on behalf of the administration. And I don't have an Antony Blinken Secretary of State clip, even though he was out there on a couple of the shows as well. But like I said, I will have Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, and those are all Democrats, and then Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida. And then finally Terry McAuliffe at the end talking. You saw in that NBC News Meet the Press news summary that they talked about the Virginia race somewhat, where they said the most important issue is education, though I think it might actually be race, and I will use a clip of and fears about race and the changing racial makeup of the United States. I'll talk about that when I get to the final clip of Chuck Todd's interview with former governor and possibly future governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. But I want to juxtapose that NBC News Meet the Press news summary. Oh, I like the scary Halloween poll news for Democrats. It wasn't quite framed that way, but pretty close. And I talked a few weeks ago about how Fox News was using this one outlier poll that showed Biden's approval rating at 38%, but Biden's approval rating really has been sinking, and Democrats have, especially as they negotiate this bill. If they actually get something passed this week, and it's possible the bipartisan infrastructure bill will pass. According to the Sunday shows yesterday, everyone was saying it was going to pass on Tuesday, and I saw in the live comments that people were talking about some of the breaking news. I saw that... who was it in the comments section? Grumpy Cat said, I just read that Manchin will not support the $1.7 trillion bill. I did watch a news conference from West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, the most conservative Democrat in the Senate, and he was saying he wouldn't support the $1.75 trillion Build Back Better Democrat-only reconciliation bill until he saw the text and he could see exactly how, like, the tax portions of, that they could score the tax provisions and see exactly who was going to be paying and how much things were going to cost. And he was also against the budget gimmicks where like they renew a program or they only pay for a program for a few years, but they assume that some future Congress is actually going to renew it, and if they do renew it, it means the cost goes up. And anyway, so that what Grumpy Cat was saying is actually true, that there are some problems there. Although I did also see a report that the leader of the Progressive Caucus, Representative Pramila Jayapal, said that the Progressive Caucus is willing to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill in the House. You know, it's already passed the Senate with 19 Republicans along with all 50 Democrats. And so if the House votes for it, it can go right to Biden's desk to be signed. And apparently the progressives are willing to vote on that, even though the whole Build Back Better reconciliation deal isn't finished. And I think what Representative Jayapal said is that the progressives are willing to let, you know, Bernie Sanders and the progressive senators deal with that. Oh, and I also just see that Lulu Girl has shown up and given me a Super Chat contribution, so I appreciate that as well. And anyway, that's what I wanted to say about the NBC News Meet the Press news summary and some of the updates that I've heard since that news summary. But I wanted, like I said, I want to juxtapose it with the ABC News This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary, where they have Cecelia Vega with Biden in Europe, and they focus more on that. Although this is actually interesting to juxtapose to the next one, Fox News Sunday, where they have Peter Doocy in Europe following Biden. And if anyone knows about Steve Doocy, Fox and Friends, and his son, Fox News journalist, reporter, Peter Doocy, you know that's definitely going to be more biased, so that'll be interesting to juxtapose with what Cecelia Vega says with George Stephanopoulos in the clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. As we come on the air this morning, President Biden is attending the G20 summit in Rome, the first in-person meeting of the world leaders since the pandemic. He went to Mass in the Pope's Archdiocese last night, receiving communion with First Lady Jill Biden. And this morning, Biden met with Turkish President Erdogan. He'll give a press conference later today before heading to Glasgow for the UN Climate Conference. Chief White House correspondent Cecelia Vega is traveling with the president. She joins us this morning from Rome. And Cecelia, two big items on the agenda at the G20, climate change and getting vaccines to poor countries.
Yeah, exactly, George. Good morning to you. And this is why this is so important. We're talking about the world's 20th largest economies who are responsible for emitting 80% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The head of the UN recently said the dramatic action they need to take at this summit here, if it doesn't happen, we are looking at a one-way ticket to disaster, he said. So really what is happening here in Rome today is going to set the stage for that high-stakes summit, COP26 in Glasgow. President Biden heads there tomorrow, and he is really facing serious questions as he heads into that conference as to whether he can meet these huge goals that he has set for reducing emissions back home over the next decade. You mentioned those vaccine distributions. That is a huge topic here as well. The United States has committed to donating more than 1 billion doses over the next year. That is more than all of the world's countries combined. And another major issue here today, George, I want to tell you about that huge supply crisis that Americans have been following back home that has led to so many empty shelves around the country and high prices. Leaders are really here trying to today identify where the bottlenecks are in that supply chain crisis. And one thing that President Biden is about to announce here this morning is this deal with the EU over aluminum and steel tariffs. The White House says this is a really big deal because this is going to directly impact Americans and their pocketbooks. It says they're going to end up seeing lower prices for really important things and things they've had a hard time finding, like cars and refrigerators and stoves. But George, I also got to tell you, we're looking at a press conference later today. The president hasn't had one of these in 4 months like this. He's going to be facing a lot of questions on all of those topics.
He certainly will. That's not all he's going to be getting questions on. Of course, he's going to be getting questions on the Build Back Better plan as well. He laid out his framework before he left, but left with no deal. Still doesn't have a deal at hand. Are White House officials optimistic they're going to get it done this week?
They are optimistic, and it's not just the White House. We are hearing finally some pretty serious optimism from Capitol Hill. Democrats are still looking over this legislation. So as it stands right now, the president does not have this legislation in hand ready to sign. But House leaders, Democrats on the Hill, are signaling that they could be looking, George, at a vote potentially as soon as Tuesday. But the reality is President Biden is here right now on this high-stakes European summit without that bill signed. That is not what the White House wanted.
Cecelia, Vega, thanks very much. Let's get more on this now from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
And like I said, I will have a clip of Secretary Pete Buttigieg talking about paid parental leave not being in the final version of the bill. You did see there Cecelia Vega at the end talk about a possible Tuesday vote on in the House on the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, or they call it the BIF. I guess that's bipartisan infrastructure. I don't know what that stands for, but the House might vote on the Senate bipartisan bill tomorrow. And even with some of the news breaking today, I think that might still happen. It's just that they're still going to be negotiating the second bill, and they're going to rely on the good faith in the Senate of Senators Joe Manchin, or the progressives are just going to trust that the progressives in the House are going to trust that the progressives in the Senate will come to a deal with Senators Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, which I don't know why it's taken so long, and why negotiations only really started a few weeks ago. But I thought that was sort of a balanced look at what's happening with the Biden administration. In some ways, it was less pessimistic than what you saw from NBC News' Meet the Press. It talked about some successes on or work that they're doing to get rid of the supply chain bottlenecks at this foreign conference that Biden's got, the G20 conference, and also getting rid of the tariffs on steel. And apparently they got rid of their tariffs on our whiskey, or I don't know exactly all the dimensions of the deal, but I did talk about some successes there. Not quite as positive a view from Chris Wallace and Peter Doocy on Fox News Sunday yesterday, which I said would make a good juxtaposition here. It's just slightly shorter, like 20 seconds shorter, but I think you'll see a kind of different spin from Fox News, as you might expect, and I will talk about it with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Again, from Fox News in Washington. President Biden is meeting with world leaders in Europe this weekend, pushing his climate change policies and once again declaring America is back. But back here at home, his own party continues to block his domestic agenda. And his political team is closely watching the tight governor's race in Virginia, where a defeat could signal Democrats are in danger of losing their control of Congress in next year's midterms. In a moment, we'll discuss the latest holdup to passing big infrastructure and social spending bills with Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. But first, let's bring in Peter Doocy, traveling with the president in Rome, with the latest on Mr. Biden's efforts to win support overseas and at home. Peter.
Chris, President Biden left problems with inflation and immigration an ocean away and came here looking to benefit not just the U.S., but the entire world with movement on climate change. And at a press conference today, we'll find out how he thinks he did.
The Biden foreign policy doctrine is taking shape. He'd like the U.S. to restart talks with Iran about their nuclear program by November.
Mr. President, when would you like talks with Iran to resume?
He'd like to make nice with America's oldest ally, France, after a nuclear-powered sub-deal went sideways.
The answer is, I think what happened was, to use an English phrase,
and he's joining the G20 in endorsing a new global minimum tax of 15%. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says this deal will remake the global economy. His attempt to do the same thing at home has been blocked by progressives in the House and centrists in the Senate.
They're throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks that will get 50 votes.
And until progressives know the $1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan will pass the Senate, they won't vote yes on a bipartisan infrastructure bill.
So many people, yes, no, doing the hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Leaders hope to bring both bills up Tuesday as the president returns from overseas sit-downs with presidents, prime ministers, and the Pope. This is the first time the full G20 has met in person since Biden became president. But one word that is not prominently featured in any of the public sessions or, we are told, the private meetings, Afghanistan. Chris?
Peter Doocy reporting from Rome with the president. Peter, thanks for that. And joining us now, Secretary of Transportation.
So yeah, Secretary Pete Buttigieg was on Fox News Sunday, but I'm not going to show the Fox News Sunday interview because I want to show a bad, biased interview that Chris Wallace does later of Florida Senator Rick Scott. I think that just by watching the Fox News Sunday news summary from Peter Doocy, juxtaposed with the Cecelia Vega news summary, and George Stephanopoulos and Chris Wallace were there as well. But I think the Fox News one was much more biased. There's that thing about leaving behind inflation and immigration, which those are like two problems that Fox News has been. That's like something they've been beating into their viewers' heads every day. If you watch as much Fox News as I do, you see immigration and inflation, or it's Biden's border crisis I'm not like making up that's the subtext. It's the actual text on the screen when they report this day after day, Biden's border crisis, and then it's Biden's, I think, tax and spending spree whenever they talk about inflation, which they talk about every day, all the they're of course, as I point sometimes to the loudest voice in the room, this Gabriel Sherman book here that talks about how Roger Ailes created Fox News. The late Roger Ailes created it to be a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party, and while some journalism does incidentally occur there on occasion, that is not the purpose of Fox News. And I think looking at Peter Doocy's story, he didn't talk about successes like the steel tariffs. Didn't hear anything about the steel tariffs there. Didn't hear about how he's working on getting rid of the bottlenecks that are causing some of the inflation. You heard about the new Biden doctrine, which is taking shape, but the report that followed it didn't really give a Biden doctrine that I could tell. It talked about talks with Iran, problems with France, the global minimum tax, and then used that to transition to problems back at home. That Mitch McConnell clip, of course, what Democrat did they use to take it? It was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, another like hot button issue for Fox News viewers, and of course they added in what word won't you hear? Afghanistan, because that's another thing they've been trying to talk about, all the problems in Afghanistan. Like Fox News ever covered all the problems in Afghanistan during the last 20 years? Very rarely. But now that U.S. forces have left Afghanistan, they talk about the tragic human cost of the U.S. not being in Afghanistan, when they probably could have done a similar story in many countries around the world where the U.S. is not. But anyway, that is some of the Fox News bias that I was talking about, that I took little notes while I was watching the clip with you there. And the next news summary, I think, covers a lot of the same issues, but that as the last two, but not very. Actually, the next two are both very short. CBS News Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, and then CNN State of the Union hosted by Dana Bash yesterday. I'll just get through those two really quick since they're both about a minute long. Here's Face the Nation, just like rapid fire topics over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin a consequential week in Washington with lawmakers eyeing votes on two key bills that make up President Biden's domestic agenda, while he also pushes to revive American leadership abroad. Overseas this morning, the challenge of how to survive on a hotter planet faces world leaders at the G20 summit. The president also discussed other national security threats with often troublesome ally Turkey's President Erdogan. With much of the rest of the globe still fighting COVID and seeking access to a vaccine, recovering from this pandemic is a challenge for the economy and a slow global supply chain. The increasingly tense relationship with China is at the heart of all of it. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's traveling with the president, met today with Chinese officials for the first time since his tense confrontation with them in March. We spoke with the secretary earlier and began by asking him when the U.S. will resume negotiations over Iran's nuclear program.
Well, the Iranians have now said.
And like I said, I don't have a clip of Antony Blinken. He was on a couple shows, but CBS News Face the Nation uploads all of their program in segments to a YouTube channel that I put at a link down in the video description under the heading Sources. And I have the source of all my clips down there. But the CBS News Face the Nation source is a YouTube channel where their entire program is split into clips on YouTube, including the entire Antony Blinken interview if you want to watch it. But like I said, I thought that was just a rapid-fire look at the same set of topics, and not with the bias you saw on Fox News. And then CNN State of the Union does a similar topic roundup. I think the framework of Biden foreign policy successes versus domestic problems, that I guess is fair and balanced, unlike Fox News. And that's, I think, the framing on CNN State of the Union with Dana Bash in the news summary, final news summary, that you can juxtapose with the previous four and talk about with me in the comments after we watch it together over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is testing its international strength. Right now, President Biden is in Rome on his final day at the G20, a major gathering of world leaders, the first in-person G20 since the COVID-19 pandemic. Climate change, COVID-19 vaccines, and the supply chain crisis are some of the major issues on the agenda. The president did secure a major victory, a groundbreaking global corporate minimum tax. And this morning, President Biden announced a new trade deal with the EU to remove Trump-era tariffs. The president had hoped to be meeting with world leaders after a moment of triumph at home, going to Capitol Hill to ask Democrats to get behind his agenda. But a final deal still remains just out of reach. Tonight, the president flies to Scotland for COP26, a high-stakes international climate summit. Some are calling it the last chance for the world to come together on a plan to help slow the climate crisis. Joining me now from Rome is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Mr. Secretary. And
like I said, no Antony Blinken clips, although there is a link down to CNN State of the Union. I don't know if they have the whole interview available at that link. But I do like the way Dana Bash at the end of that news summary talked about how this could be the last chance for the world to come together and get carbon emissions under control. I say every now and then when I talk about climate change that when you look back at these weekly news summaries, if you looked back on in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what is going to be the most important topic? What was it that they didn't talk about that they should have been talking about? Well, global climate change, carbon emissions, the need to avoid catastrophic climate change by ending and putting caps on, and then finally ending carbon emissions by going to clean energy sources. That's going to be the big issue probably. I'm not a time traveler. I can't predict the future, but based on the knowledge we have now, that would be the most likely prediction. That's my opinion, so you can let me know what you think in the comment section about all that, and which of the news summaries of the 5 you think was best, which was the most biased, the least biased. I kind of gave my opinion on that along the way, and now I have 3 Democrats I'm going to show you talking about this deal. First, I'm going to show you Bernie Sanders talking to Dana Bash about the need to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies for Medicare. This is weird because this is not like a policy benefit. this isn't a spending part of the bill. This is actually a revenue part of the bill, or it's a cost saving. It's a cut in spending that lowers the cost of the bill because, as you'll hear Bernie Sanders say, the Veterans Administration gets to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies and pays half of what Medicare pays. And all around the world, drug companies from the United States charge less for drugs than they charge American consumers and the U.S. government through Medicare. And why is it? Well, you'll hear that, and that was not in the bill. And you'll hear Dan Avash mention Senator Kyrsten Sinema worried that it will stop innovation, pharmaceutical innovation, which from my perspective just means, well, stop her getting so many donations from the pharmaceutical industry. But anyway, I think I've done enough pre-criticizing of the clip. Now I'm going to show you Bernie Sanders on drug price negotiation. Then I'll show you Ro Khanna talking about climate change, what I was just saying is the most important issue maybe. And then Pete Buttigieg on parental leave. But starting with Bernie Sanders talking about fighting big pharma over in this clip.
You have said there are major gaps in this plan. Several of your priorities, paid leave, dental and vision for Medicare, giving the government power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for seniors. That's not in the deal. You saw that House progressives endorsed the compromise. Do you?
Well, it's not in the bill yet, but what I can tell you, Donna, we are working right now. I spent all of yesterday on the telephone. Look, we are paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. The pharmaceutical industry has spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make certain that Americans pay 10 times more for some drugs than the Canadians or the Mexicans do. That fight continues. And the fight to expand Medicare, look, poll after poll shows that the American people understand it is not acceptable that elderly people have teeth in their mouth that are rotting. They can't digest their food. They don't have the vision that they need in order to read a newspaper. So we are continuing that effort.
So
and
can I just...
It pains me very much. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to just make sure that I understand what you're saying. You're saying you're continuing that effort. You want to still add it before the House votes? You want to add it to the bill that the House...
Absolutely. Look, we're working, as everybody should know, we're on two separate bills. You got a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which will finally begin to address the reality that our roads and our bridges and our water systems are crumbling. That's one bill. But we want to move both bills in tandem. And the second bill, the bill that deals with the needs of the working class of this country in terms of childcare, in terms of pre-K, that deals with the existential threat of climate, that bill is still being worked on literally today. It will be worked on tomorrow. I believe we're making some progress in making it even stronger than it is.
If you don't succeed in that progress, will you support the framework as it currently stands, what the White House released at the end of the week?
Well, all I will tell you is we have a very, very strong bill, and it deals with the fact that we are going to start paying attention to the needs of working parents, continue that $300. We're going to build affordable housing. We're going to make sure that elderly people and people with disabilities can stay at home rather than be forced into a nursing home, et cetera. We're going to demand that the wealthiest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes.
So is that, sounds like that's a yes. If you're not successful, you will support
it. It's a very good bill. No, but I am, right now, I can tell you, I have worked yesterday, we're working today, we're going to work tomorrow to strengthen that bill. It is outrageous that we continue to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs.
I want to ask you about that.
And that 1 out of 4 Americans cannot afford the prescriptions that their doctors write. That is not acceptable.
Let's talk about that, because that is one of the priorities that right now is on the cutting room floor, allowing the government to negotiate lower drug prices for seniors. I've heard you talk about this hundreds of times, probably. I was told that Senator Kyrsten Sinema says she opposes it because it stifles innovation in the pharmaceutical industry. What do you make of that? And what conversations, you're saying you're working on trying to change this, are you talking to her? Do you think that she is convincible?
Look, this is not about Senator Sinema or Senator Manchin. It's about 50 senators and the outrage.
Yeah, but they make up,
have one
Matt,
Republican.
they make up
All right,
the
but
50 senators.
So do we all. But here is the bottom line. Last year, pharmaceutical industry made $50 billion in profit. Last year, the top CEOs made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in outrageous levels of compensation. All right. So the issue is right now, the pharmaceutical industry is doing everything that it can to make sure that 1 out of 4 Americans is unable to afford the prescriptions that their doctors write. People are dying. The cost of insulin is totally 10 times more in this country.
Will you vote
than
for
it
a
is in
bill that
Canada.
doesn't include
now, anyone
that?
tells me
You're talking
Pardon
about
me?
how important it is. Would you vote for a bill that doesn't include changing what you're describing as a very big problem?
as soon as I leave the studio, I'm going to be going back home to get on the phone to make sure that we have it. The American people, over 80% of the American people, give you an example. Right now, the Veterans Administration is paying half because they negotiate prescription drug prices. They are paying literally 50% of what Medicare is paying. Does that make any sense to anybody? One government agency paying half as much as another government agency? That has got to be dealt with. We are working very hard to make that happen.
One of the reasons, and I know you've spoken to him and you've heard him say publicly, Senator Joe Manchin refuses to endorse some of the Medicare expansion in this is...
Yeah, so there you see, I pretty much pre-criticized that clip, although one update I would say is that I have heard that Senator Bernie Sanders is still negotiating, trying to get the price negotiation, the ability to negotiate prices with Big Pharma back into the bill. And you heard the Kyrsten Sinema pharmaceutical innovation argument there that Bernie Sanders even laughed at. And, over the last few months that I've been covering this topic, I talked about how Bernie Sanders did a good job of emphasizing hearing, vision, and dental. Hearing, vision, and dental for added to Medicare so that old people can get glasses and hearing aids and get their teeth fixed. And he apparently, at least for now, has given up dental and vision. It's just the hearing aids, although that's still also being negotiated. But that was Bernie Sanders talking about the issues he's been fighting for so long. And I think that if the House some of the House progressives are willing to see their trust, they don't necessarily have to trust Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema if they can trust Bernie Sanders, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. I guess we'll have to see. But I wanted to juxtapose Bernie Sanders' argument there on negotiating prices with Big Pharma with Representative Ro Khanna, a progressive in the House, talking about the climate change provisions. And especially, I talked about this clean energy program, clean electricity program that was supposed to give incentives to the electricity producers in the United States to make their electricity without using fossil fuels, without creating carbon emissions. And that's really important because it doesn't matter how many, I've said this multiple times now, it doesn't matter how many electric cars you have if when you plug the car in, the electricity that you're charging it up with is, created in some coal-fired power plant somewhere, or even natural gas still has carbon emissions. But anyway, that was a program that Joe Manchin kicked out of the Build Back Better bill, this program that was supposed to turn U.S. electricity production into zero carbon emissions over a period of time. Here you can hear in this next clip, Representative Ro Khanna is talking to Margaret Brennan on CBS News' Face the Nation about the other things that are in the bill that are supposed to be like almost as good. I'm kind of skeptical that it's as good as getting all of the electricity production in the United States to be done with zero carbon emissions. But anyway, you can hear his argument talking to Margaret Brennan yesterday on CBS News Face the Nation in a clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Anything else that you know of that might be added into this before it goes to a vote?
We're still working on getting the climate provisions secured. One of the main things we've done is have a methane fee. There was the American Petroleum Institute, others having massive ads against it. We fought. That will be in part of the framework. The Climate Civilian Corps is part of the framework, so the climate parts are still being negotiated.
Okay, because one of the climate you're passionate about, I know,
Yes.
but one of the biggest portions of the original proposal, the Clean Energy Performance Program, is a $150 billion program that didn't make the framework. So how much of a defeat was it to lose that?
It was a setback, but then the parts that were added, I think, are very strong because there was another $150 billion added to have electric vehicles, solar, wind, in collaboration with the private sector, funding new energy sources. So is it better that we had the clean electricity program? Of course, but I still believe we can hit the 50% goals by 2030 with this plan coupled with regulatory action. It is the strongest climate investment that the country has ever made. And Margaret, we're doing this with a majority that is less than President Clinton had, less than President Obama had. I mean, they had 57, 60 senators. Here you've got 50-50.
And you're doing it all on a party line vote.
And that's the question. Why isn't there a single Republican who's for paid family leave? I mean, I heard you say, paid family leave's out. Why is there no one asking the Republicans? They claim to be the working class party. They're not with us on paid family leave.
So do you actually?
And kudos to Representative Ro Khanna there for asking the question why working class Republicans aren't for paid family leave, 12 weeks, 4 weeks, or any weeks, apparently, because it all has to be done with 50 Democratic votes. And I'm going to get to Pete Buttigieg asking that same question in just a minute. But like I said before I showed the clip, I don't think the provisions that are in the Build Back Better bill are better than the program that Margaret Brennan actually said it, and I took note. The Clean Energy Performance Program. I thought it's the CEPP, and I thought it was clean electricity for some reason, and I don't feel so bad about that because I heard Ro Khanna in that clip. He actually said the Clean Energy Program. I mean the Clean Electricity Program, even though it's the Clean Energy Performance Program. That was that program that, like I said, is supposed to transition the United States away from all electricity production that is creates carbon emissions, and that is a key part of fighting climate change, like I said. And anyway, that's why I don't think I really buy Ro Khanna's argument, but he did at least ask why there aren't Republicans on their side, and particularly on parental leave. And you'll hear Pete Buttigieg make that same point and also claim that they're still going to work on getting parental leave, paid parental leave, which I'm kind of skeptical of that also. But I'll talk about that a little more after we watch Pete Buttigieg talk about paid parental leave, talking to George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week yesterday together over in this clip.
One of the provisions that's not in the bill that's been dropped from the bill is paid family leave. Of course, you've had some recent experience with paid leave, taking care of your new twins. It's been dropped from the bill. We know there's still some lobbying going on behind the scenes to get it back in. Any hope for that, or is that a fight for another day?
Well, look, it's definitely something that we believe in. And so while it is not in this framework, we're going to keep fighting for it. As you said, I believe in it. The president does. And let me say this. Any other policy priority that we have as an administration, as a party, it's going to be that much easier to deliver in a future where we are in a position of strength because we've gotten this done. What we have in front of us right now, this is not half a loaf. It is a feast of good policy. It is the most transformative legislation for families, for healthcare, for climate that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime. And it's going to be an extraordinary achievement as soon as we can get it to the president's desk. And then departments like mine will be getting to work using those taxpayer dollars well to make everyday American life better.
You say you're very optimistic, but we still haven't seen expressions of support from the two senators that seem to matter most right now, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema.
Well, again, we are the closest we have ever been, and the president put forward this framework, having talked to them and others throughout the progressive and moderate wings of our party, confident that it will pass. And, this is a process that's taken up to a year and a huge amount of consultation, listening. I've seen the president paying close attention to what members across the party have to say, talking to Republicans. Remember, we got a bipartisan vote for the infrastructure part of the deal. I wouldn't, by the way, let Republicans off the hook on voting for the family provisions, too. I know they probably won't, but it's not too late for some of them to join Democrats who are united in believing that the time has come for us to actually put our money where our mouth is, support American families, and do it with a fairer tax code that rewards work, not wealth, that asks corporations to pay their fair share, and that makes this a fairer system for everybody.
I know you're confident, but what are the consequences of failure?
So, that's the one Pete Buttigieg clip I want to show you. Almost said, put your mouth where your money is, which that doesn't sound sanitary to me, but I also am skeptical that there's, maybe they have some strategy based on, because that was a talking point I heard from several people on this Sunday shows yesterday. They're like, why aren't you asking the Republicans why they don't support parental leave, paid parental leave, 4 weeks, 8 or 12. It was supposed to be 12 weeks. It was cut to 4 weeks, and then it was cut out of the bill. And I don't know, that maybe that is the kind of thing that they could bring up separately as like a standalone bill, and see how many Republicans are willing to vote against. You heard Ro Khanna say in the previous clip, I think in some ways he said it better than Pete Buttigieg. They claim to be working class, but why aren't they supporting this huge benefit that would help working class people when they have children? They're also, Republicans are also supposed to be pro-family, and what's more pro-family than giving 12 weeks paid parental leave? And it's hugely, wildly popular with the American people, so maybe later there will be some strategy to bring it up as a standalone bill. I can only hope, because it's pretty ridiculous that isn't going to be part of Build Back Better, and it would be pretty ridiculous if we get to the November 2022 midterm elections and nobody has given paid, and this isn't even, anyway, I think I've talked enough about that. But one other thing I wanted to say about Pete Buttigieg, you heard George Stephanopoulos ask him, or say that he knows about parental leave because he was actually on parental leave, and he got roasted by Fox News and the right wing for being on parental leave when there was this supply chain problem. And he talked about that in previous weeks, but this week he did talk about his twins on a couple different shows. He was asked, I almost took this as my political comedy clip, where a couple different of the anchors asked him about what his twins were being dressed up for as for Halloween, and apparently they're sort of in these traffic cone costumes or something, where he said they're dressed up as infrastructure. His infant children were dressed up as infrastructure. So that was one last thing you need to know about Pete Buttigieg's appearances on the Sunday shows. And now I want to get to this really bad cross-examination of Senator Rick Scott from Florida. I don't want to go into all my weird theories about Rick Scott and how he appears sort of reptilian. I've talked about that on previous shows, but I don't want to appearance shame him or whatever. But what I do want to shame him for, and Chris Wallace for in this next clip, I talked about how inflation is something that is one of the talking points that they're beating into the heads of Fox News viewers over and over again, day after day. like multiple times an hour. They talk about the huge inflation problem and, how much more gas costs now than a year ago when we were in the middle of a pandemic that, in middle of pandemic lockdowns and economic activity. There was like a huge drop in economic activity, and they're comparing gas prices now to gas prices then, which isn't really fair. And a lot of the economic experts have said inflation is transitory, and I don't know if that's true or not, but one thing I do know is that there's nothing inherently inflationary about government spending if it is also tied to revenue in the same amount. If the government pays for its spending by increasing taxes or whatever, it's putting the same amount of money into the economy as it's taking out of the economy. And all of these Democratic bills, both the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill, is paid for with additional revenue. In fact, apparently, because of Joe Manchin's request, the Build Back Better bill brings in $200 billion more in revenue. It brings in $1.95 trillion, and it only costs $1.75 trillion. So it actually brings in, it cuts the deficit. But Chris Wallace in this next clip lets Rick Scott get away with claiming that the Democrats' bills increase the deficit and increase inflation. And Chris Wallace has like two cross-examination questions. One, aren't there good things in this bill that would be good for Florida? And then, didn't the Republicans increase the deficit with their big tax cut? But he never really addresses the inflation talking point that, like I said, gets drilled into Fox News viewers' heads like day after day, hour after hour, like multiple times an hour. If you watch Fox News, you're not going to go an hour without hearing about Biden is increasing inflation and it's hurting. And anyway, it's not like it's not happening at all, but it's like a huge exaggeration and deserves cross-examination that it doesn't get in this Fox News clip that I've now possibly over-criticized, but I will criticize a little more after we watch it together over here.
What they're talking about with this, would name whatever the bill is, all it's going to do is cause more inflation. Do you look at what it's doing to poor families in this country with gas prices up 55%? Go to the grocery store, food prices are up. It's all caused by government spending. And by the way, if you look at inflation, the border, parents' involvement in schools, our military support, there is nothing that they're talking about doing. There's nothing that Democrats are talking about doing that's solving a problem that Americans care about. I mean, there's solve the problem for every family. Like mine growing up, my mom struggled to put food on the table. Inflation hurt her. Solve it. Fix it. They have no fixes in this administration. They're like commentators. Yeah, we're going to have a problem through next year. No, go solve the problem.
Well, that's a real insult to compare them to commentators, Senator. Let me ask you about the infrastructure bill, though, because it's not a political game. It affects real people. And while 19 senators voted for the bipartisan infrastructure plan that passed the Senate with a healthy bipartisan majority, you opposed it. And I want to put up some of the things that would be affected in your home state of Florida. More than 3,500 miles of Florida highways are in poor condition. You voted against $13 billion to repair them. Here's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
This package would extend high-speed internet to every American. Are you against that? Would ensure that children aren't drinking poisoned water. Are you against that?
You also voted against money in the infrastructure bill to help your home state of Florida deal with extreme weather, which you have plenty of in Florida. Why'd you oppose the infrastructure bill when 19 Republican senators supported it?
Chris, I believe in spending money on real infrastructure, roads, bridges,
but that's what this
bill
has in it, sir.
I spent $85 billion in my 8 years as governor. right? Let's look at the bill that passed the Senate. It's not paid for. I paid for my infrastructure. I actually paid down debt. I balanced the budget. This bill, they said it was going to be paid for. It wasn't paid for. This bill said it was infrastructure. Less than half of that bill was roads, bridges, airports, and seaports. You put a bill in front of me that's going to be roads, bridges, airports, and seaports paid for. I'm very interested in doing something like that. But I am not going to bankrupt this country. This country has almost $30 trillion worth of debt. That bill by itself was $250 billion of debt. This has got to end. This is causing inflation. I mean, this is hurting the poorest families. It's not hurting the rich. It's hurting families like mine growing up. They have struggled to put food on the table with this ridiculous inflation. Solve that. We've got to live within our means like every family does.
But, Senator, you talk about living within your means. You talk about the debt. You talk about deficits. The Trump tax cuts, which were passed in 2017, the year before you were elected to the Senate, is estimated by the Congressional Budget Office that it is going to increase the deficit by over $2 trillion over 11 years. So should the Trump tax cuts be repealed?
My experience is I cut taxes and fees 100 times, over $10 billion, and I actually balanced a budget and paid off a third of the state debt. You can do both. The way you do it is you look at every line of your budget. I think there's about 4,000 lines of the Florida budget. I went through every line and said, I am not going to waste anybody's money. We've got to do that at the federal level.
But sir,
we need lower taxes.
But sir,
and watch how we spend our money.
respectfully, when Donald Trump was president, you had this tax cut, which added $2 trillion to the deficit, according to the CBO, and you didn't have the commensurate spending cuts. So the question is, if you're not going to have the spending cuts, should you repeal the tax cuts if the debt and deficit are so vital?
Well, first off, I am not raising anybody's taxes. I want lower taxes. I want to watch how we spend our money. I've been in the Senate now 2 years and 9 months. The amount of waste is staggering. Americans should be furious with the way money is spent in the Senate and in all Congress. It's your money. It's not government's money. We've got to figure out how to live within our means. I did it at the state level and actually paid off the third of state debt. We've got to look at every line, take every line of the budget. Don't say, well, that's only $1 billion. It's $1 billion. That's a lot of money. We should watch how we spend every dollar, and we're not doing that.
I want to ask you about a non-budget related issue, but it involves.
And as you can see there, Chris Wallace moves on to non-budget related issues without ever really cross-examining Rick Scott on his claims about inflation, his claims that the infrastructure bill isn't paid for. Even if it is $250 billion, $250 billion, which I don't know whose analysis says that it's not paid for, that creates that amount of debt. That is also over 10 years. So you're talking about $25 billion a year. That compared to some of the other spending going on, that's not really going to create inflation. That, like I said, that's my big criticism of Chris Wallace, that and I don't know if it's because there's some like a memo coming down from on high, or just that he's listened to so much Fox News, Chris Wallace, that he just can't counteract the bogus inflation talking point that you hear over and over again on Fox News. But anyway, you can let me know what you think of. Oh, and he also let Rick Scott. I saw someone in the live comments along the way saying, Tom Trask, dude, you're an MF senator. You're not a governor anymore, which is true. He's not taking responsibility for his vote in the Senate. And he's also talking about going line by line and getting rid of spending. And that's like some governors have these line item veto. They can veto specific lines in the budget, which the Supreme Court has found. They tried to give that to the U.S. president, and it's unconstitutional. So the U.S. president does not have the line item veto. So Tom Trask, you're right about that. He's like doing the analysis of a former governor of Florida. And another thing Chris Wallace kind of let him get away with there. So anyway, that is the Last clip really on the main topic, although this is sort of related to the Democratic deal making, because you saw in the news summaries that a lot of people are worried that the lack of a deal, the lack of legislative successes in the Congress are hurting Terry McAuliffe in his attempt to become the next governor of Virginia. He's not the incumbent. Ralph Northam, the guy, I guess he's not running for re-election because he got caught in like his medical school yearbook either in blackface or as like the guy in the KKK costume next to the guy in blackface. I was never really clear which of the people he was, or I don't know which it would have been worse to be, but I don't know. You can let me know in the comment section. Is it worse to be the guy in blackface or the guy in the KKK costume next to the guy in blackface in a medical school yearbook? That whole scandal was so bizarre. But anyway, because of that, I guess Ralph Northam not running for re-election, and so former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe is running, and almost as the incumbent, because there is a incumbent Democratic governor, and he's running against this finance guy from the Carlyle Group, Glenn Youngkin, who is sort of like semi-endorsed by Donald Trump. And one of the issues that Terry McAuliffe keeps trying to bring up, and you'll see in this next clip, he keeps trying to tie Glenn Youngkin to Donald Trump. But the big issue that the Youngkin campaign has seized upon is this teaching of critical race theory in the schools, and people, especially in Loudoun County, Virginia, they're like going to the school board and trying to stop teaching that. And there's even this guy who said that his daughter was the victim of a transgender student attacking her in a bathroom, and it turned out that there was a unreported attack in a bathroom on this girl, but the whole transgender part, that actually hasn't been confirmed. But anyway, that goes like deep into the weeds of the Virginia election. But this whole thing about teaching critical race theory, and especially this quote that you're going to see at the beginning of this next clip in a debate between Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe that was actually moderated by Chuck Todd. And you'll see Chuck Todd mention that when he asked this question. Terry McAuliffe got caught in this clip saying, well, parents shouldn't get to have any, or shouldn't get to, you'll hear it's not like have any say, but parents shouldn't have control over their kids' education or whatever. But he's actually talking about this bill that he vetoed that would have allowed parents to ban books from school libraries. And one of the weird facts about this election in Virginia that supports what I told you earlier, that this is really all about race, is that the banned book that Glenn Youngkin is using in his ads, this mother whose kid, who was actually a 17-year-old in AP English, had nightmares after reading Toni Morrison's Beloved, about slavery, and you'll see Terry McAuliffe does a good job using that to his advantage. And that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning of this live stream, that I think this might be a preview of some issues you're going to hear over and over again in the November 2022 congressional midterms, where critical race theory in the schools is going to be a big Republican issue. And that's really, and then racist policies of the Republicans and tying them to Trump is going to be a big Democratic issue. And like I said at the beginning of the live stream, I think it's really all about race anxiety amongst white Americans, that basically white Americans are going to be a minority in the United States by like 2040, I think is the year right now. So that, I believe, is the whole subtext, and that is my way of overly criticizing the final newsmaker clip. Terry McAuliffe talking to Chuck Todd on NBC News' Meet the Press yesterday in like I said, the last newsmaker clip that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
President Biden's sinking approval rating is threatening to pull down the poll numbers of Democratic candidates heading into Tuesday's elections. Virginia's off-year gubernatorial elections have often been a pretty good barometer for the upcoming midterms. And right now, the Democratic candidate, former Governor Terry McAuliffe, has seen his large lead dissolve into a toss-up territory. And Governor McAuliffe joins me now. Governor, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Chuck, great to be back with you.
And I do want to make a note that we also asked Governor McAuliffe's Republican opponent, Glenn Youngkin, to appear. His campaign declined that invitation. Governor, I want to start with an excerpt from this debate that I was moderating at that had one line clipped out. You've said it's out of context. I want to play the exchange more fully and ask you about it on the other side. Here it is.
Parents had the right to veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So, Governor, what about that you feel as if you were taken out of context? Do you feel as if everything you said there should reassure parents that they have some say in their kids' schooling?
Listen, that was about a bill I vetoed, which people were very happy that I vetoed the bill, that literally parents could take books out of the curriculum. You know, I love Millie and Jack McAuliffe, my parents, but they should not have been picking my math or science book. We have experts who actually do that. And look what happened. He is closing his campaign on banning books. It's created a controversy all over the country. He wants to ban Toni Morrison's book, Beloved. So he's going after one of the most preeminent African-American female writers in American history, won the Nobel Prize as Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he wants her books banned. Now, of all the hundreds of books you could look at, why did you take the one black female author? Why did you do it? He's ending his campaign on a racist dog whistle, just like he started the campaign when he talks about election integrity. But, Chuck, we have a great school system in Virginia. Dorothy and I have raised our 5 children. Of course, parents are involved in it. The question should be, could an extreme Republican bill that would allow parents to take books off of shelves, should that be left in the hands of the parents, or should it be left to the school boards and others who do this every single day and focus on it?
They would argue that bill is not saying...
As you saw in the crowd, everybody clapped when I said it.
I understand that, but they would say this is not about banning a book. This is about informing parents that a book may have some material that... not all parents will be crazy about. We should let you know that your kid is going to be dealing with this material. Is that out of bounds?
That's not out of bounds, but if you look at what the bill would be, they ultimately would have led to books being removed from our classrooms. And listen, as they say, we're the 4th best school education system in the country, our K-12 system. We're great. You look at my plan, I'm going to raise teacher pay. I'm going to get a children pre-K education, those at risk 3- and 4-year-olds. I'm going to get everybody access to broadband. What's Glenn Youngkin's education plan? He wants to ban critical race theory. Well, let me explain to you. It's never been taught in Virginia. Number 2, he says he wants to, day 1, all masks come off and no teachers get vaccinated. Well, that's life-threatening. We have 1,142 children who've been in a hospital here in Virginia. 2 11-year-olds just died the other day from COVID. He doesn't have an education plan. He's got a Donald Trump, Betsy DeVos, take money out of public schools, put them into private schools. That doesn't work in Virginia, and that's why parents supported me when I vetoed that bill, and I am the one who has the plan to move our education system forward.
You know, if you look at the Washington Post Schar School poll, on the issue of education, it looks...
So, yeah, and you see how Chuck Todd then goes back and says it's the issue of education, but like I said before, I showed the clip, maybe in too great detail, pre-criticism. I think the issue is really race, not education. And critical race theory is really about white anxiety, and I've seen it played up over and over again on Fox News. That's another one of their big talking points, critical race theory, and as well as that clip you saw, and I wrote down exactly what he said. I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach, is what he said at the very end of that clip that Chuck Todd showed. But in context, it actually does make sense, because he's talking about banning books, like banning Beloved. And you see when Terry McAuliffe was gave that answer about the bill that he vetoed, he actually got applause from the crowd. but that one little clip at the end that he says, and I agree that it is kind of taken out of context. I've seen it over and over again on Fox News, where they just have him saying, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach," and then the anchors and guests on Fox News are all like outraged that he doesn't understand that parents should be involved, and it's the most important part of education is the involvement in parents. And I don't know. I mean, some of those parents who show up, or I'm sure a lot of the parents who show up at those school board meetings are sincere in the comments they're making, but there's also a lot of evidence that there is some financial support from right-wing conservative organizations to promote to support and promote these attacks on school boards for, not banning Toni Morrison's book Beloved or whatever. And I don't know if what you saw there from Terry McAuliffe is going to be enough to win him the election. There's a long history of the governorship of Virginia going to the party that doesn't control Washington, D.C. And what happens in Washington, D.C. has a big effect on Virginia because, Washington, D.C. is right in between Virginia and Maryland. And so it has a stronger effect there than pretty much anywhere in the country. And there are a lot of government workers who live in Northern Virginia. Well, that's something that's going to happen tomorrow. The election's tomorrow. And as I said at the beginning of the live stream, a lot of pundits say it's a bellwether for what's going to happen next year, which I'm not sure I really buy that. I've never really been a big fan of Terry McAuliffe ever since he was like the money guy for Bill Clinton. I always thought he was kind of sleazy, but I would vote for him over Glenn Youngkin any day. I'd rather have like a sleazy former money guy of Bill Clinton's who's been a governor of Virginia and has a reasonable track record rather than this former member of the Carlyle group who is like sort of like playing footsie with Donald Trump in the dark but doesn't want to like admit that he's a Trump endorsed candidate, and also is using the book Beloved by Toni Morrison in this ad he's playing of this mother. I don't know if you've seen the ad. I guess maybe I should have included that clip. There's this weird cut in there where they show her moving her hands around. I don't know if it's so they can show her ring. She's got like a Celtic symbol ring and then her wedding ring, and maybe it's to show that she's married, or I don't know, but there's like this weird cut where they just show her hands, like maybe to show she's like nervous, or where she's like rubbing her hands together. That's the weirdest part of the ad for me. But it's also really weird that Glenn Youngkin decided to spend all this money promoting the idea that schools should ban the book Beloved by Toni Morrison for students in AP English, which is really a college course. And the fact that that's got twisted around on Fox News, it just shows how twisted our politics has become. And anyway, I've been talking for a long time, and I've shown all the clips, and I appreciate all of you who showed up for the live show. I appreciate all of my recorded show viewers who will, especially if you give me a comment as a recorded show viewer, that shows that this is also worthwhile for people who don't watch it live. That helps me out deciding, as I've been talking about, sometime in the next, it's November now, so sometime this month, by the end of next month, I'm going to decide whether to continue the Monday Media Mix-Up. I'll let you know more about my thinking in the next 7 or 8 live streams, but I also want to end the program with a Dash and Sandy clip for the Dash and Sandy or Dandy fans out there. My cat Dash and my dog Sandy. I actually was having problems getting a Dash and Sandy clip today, and so I have to admit what I did is I saw my cat Dash sleeping in a laundry basket next to my dog Sandy kind of sleeping on the floor, and just to get you this clip, I dumped out the laundry basket to get the cat next to the dog, and really it wasn't worth it, and I'm ashamed. I did it, but it's on video. You can see it all yourself. in the final clip to finish the program today over here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I did that. I should plan better and get a more natural Dash and Sandy clip for you, but that was just mean. Although I have to tell you, within about 2 minutes, Dash was back sleeping in the laundry basket, and Sandy is like snoring right over there to my left. Came over into the room as my one live show viewer. Live studio audience viewer, I guess. I have my live stream viewers, of course, who I appreciate you for showing up. Anyway, that's the program. I will be back next Monday and every Monday through 2021 at least. I have been sort of hinting to some local police accountability video that I will be uploading. That's still going to happen sometime in November, I'm sure. And so you can look for that on my channel in between my Monday media mix-ups, but I don't know if that'll happen this week, but if it doesn't, I'll be back next Monday and every Monday through 2021, and until whatever reason I have to be back on YouTube, I guess. Until then, I will be seeing all of you. Oh, thanks Tom Trask for the last-minute super chat contribution for Halloween swag for Dandy. I will try to fulfill your wishes there. And anyway, until I'm back for another video or next Monday's media mix-up, I will be seeing all of you around the internet.